Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Scott Cosenza, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative 5, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. On today's episode, have fun storming the castle. Just when things are speeding along at a blistering pace, the opposition finds a bone to gnaw on. We'll discuss in Signalgate, what are we missing? And then we hitch up the tow truck and see why the Democratic Party is still in the ditch. Climate change, there's no climate change. Activists now focus their anger with firebombs, and we'll discuss in the hottest Cold War so far. Finally, it's another quick fix to flex the brain in Just for Fun, Volume 68. All this and more in this edition of The Conservative 5. There is nothing like a good scandal to weaponize against your opponent. The progressives in the drive-by media have latched onto Signalgate as the bone to gnaw upon. Was it stupid? Yes, no question. But we also know it isn't unusual to use the app. Let's watch Press Secretary Leavitt set the record straight on the app itself.
And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred.
Okay, so Mike kind of waltzes away. I know, pun intended. That truth nugget aside, it seems the progressive left has forgotten a few scandals in the past that were swept under the rug. Scott, what do you think is going on here?
Well, first, let me take the opportunity to disagree with you that it was a stupid decision for them to use Signal. That the Trump administration comes in and they're reinventing, and not to turn an Obama phrase, but they're doing much different in government. But it's not like we find out that there's a problem with a certain type of fuel for the jets, and it's like, why are you using this fuel for the fighter jets or something else? Every single little thing that the federal government does can't be reinvestigated to see if it's a good idea the first month of the campaign or the administration. The CIA says this is approved for use. For some things, you have to say, even though it was the Biden CIA, that we're going with this communication package. So I don't fault them even one iota for using it. And I read an article today that kind of I thought was very interesting, and it really made me think of why I was one of the people who founded LibertyNation.com. I want you all to kind of pay attention to see if you're picking out what I am from this piece. I'm going to just read a couple sentences from it. It's from Politico, and the writers are Maggie Miller and Amy McKinnon, and it published on the 2nd of April, called Inside the Hazy, Fractured Mess of Single Use in the Government. Alexa Henning, spokesperson for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, tweeted last week that, quote, widespread use of Signal began under the Biden administration, adding that at ODNI, when I got my phone, it was pre-installed. But not all officials had that experience. Quote, I don't recall using it on my government phone, said Chris Inglis, who served as National Cyber Director at the White House under the Biden administration from 2021 to 2023. Now, if you didn't catch the sort of whipsaw there, Ms. Henning says it came pre-installed on their device. And then Politico challenges that notion and talks about Mr. and Ms. Inglis, who says they didn't use it much. But Inglis never said it didn't come pre-installed on their device. They just said they didn't use it. Well, Ms. Henning never said whether she used it or not. She just said it came pre-installed on her device.
It was stupid to add a journalist. It was stupid to put the journalist on the thing. That's the whole problem, not the fact that they're using the device. I mean, I don't know what Donald Trump should do. I'm going to ask you, John Clark. Should he brush the whole thing off, or should he offer up a sacrifice?
Well, I think he already has brushed the whole thing off and refused to offer up a sacrifice. And I understand exactly what Scott's saying. Though, interestingly, I watched a video recently in which Mike Benz from the Foundation for Freedom Online said that Signal was created by the CIA so that they could monitor people around the world, and perhaps even planted somehow Jeffrey Goldberg, is that his name? Why was he there? That is the big question. And when you look at this compared to other past transgressions, I found it a little bit amusing in the sense that we've heard for years about Hillary Clinton's use of emails, which I think was about 30,000 emails, and some of which were apparently, not authorized to be used in that way. And so when they were told this is the hypocrisy of conservatives because they are brushing this off, I think the hypocrisy is that they wouldn't credit anything against Hillary, and now they want to jump all over the conservatives about it. What's notable is what Carolyn Levitt mentioned, which is that the president came right out, took responsibility. We're told there was nothing really sensitive in there, though that's an ongoing debate. But I think it's a nothing burger. I think they're desperate to find any way to discredit this president. And anything he does, they will jump on him, and anything his people do, they will jump on. So I think it's a nothing burger, to use the technical legal term.
All right, I thought that was funny. Guess nobody else did. Anyway,
I'll jump in one more time just to say this. People sometimes forget the Mossad and a lot of other intelligence agencies had Clinton sex tapes with Monica in terms of indiscreet use of communication devices, that hypocrisy in the media against one group and not another. So it's not like this is a massive indiscretion we haven't seen before.
No, it's out there, and every administration manages to do something kind of stupid like this. But I think we can only speculate, but or maybe not. But was this an intentional inside job, Graham? Do you think?
Well, as you say, it's really just speculation because we don't know for sure. We don't have any particular inside knowledge of this whole incident, this chat group, and we don't have any evidence. But adding somebody to a chat group on any of these chat apps that's an intentional thing. You've got to do it. You've got to go through a couple of little steps to add someone into a chat group. And so I don't see how it could have been done inadvertently. If it was, someone still needs to be held accountable. I mean, the person, because, you've got this group of senior administration officials about to have a conversation about impending airstrikes. And of course, we can go into the whole thing about whether that the information that was exchanged on Signal was classified or not. I think that's kind of a gray area, personally. So you got this group that's going to have this discussion, and of all the people that you could have added to this discussion, you choose one of the most anti-Trump so-called journalists in the country, a man who has been known on at least one previous occasion to fabricate the story to make Trump look bad. And this is the guy that you add into this chat group. Now, like I said, yes, it's true. I don't know for sure. Maybe it was some kind of accident, but if it was an accident, it was a terrible, terrible screw up, and someone should be made accountable for it.
In my opinion, I think it was intentional, but anyway. But okay, so let's go to the next level. Is this a serious breach of national security that Graham just mentioned? I mean, was the information really that heavy, Dave?
Well, Sarah, I'm going to kind of take issue with, I guess, everybody in that.
Thank you, Dave.
I think it was a breach.
Good to know.
It was a breach of security. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Whether it was a serious breach because it did not actually rise to the standards of top secret or secret in terms of the definition. For example, secret, the lower level of the two being an unauthorized disclosure that could reasonably be expected to cause serious damage to national security. Was it an unauthorized disclosure? Yes, it was. But did it cause a serious damage to the national security because of the timing? No, it did not. Was it a serious lapse of maintaining tight security awareness? Absolutely. However, it raises a critical question, I think, about valuing convenience over absolute security discipline. People with security clearances must take a refresher course every year on insider threats and inadvertent releases of classified information. It's comprehensive and it covers situations very similar to what the National Security Council experienced. It may be
basically you're not supposed to take them home and put them in your garage next to the Corvette,
right? But it may seem old school. But it wasn't so long ago that when you needed a group classified conversation, you went into a secure video conference room and used secure communication devices. I know Signal is very convenient and easy to use app. It's encrypted at both ends, but no one knows exactly whether or not when you put in JG in calling up people you want on the conference, you may get Jeffrey Goldberg or you might get Jonah Goldberg. And if you're not paying attention, you just simply are introducing human error, and it negates any convenience that Signal offers.
I'm just having a hard time with it. I don't know. I don't know. Scott, you want to weigh in on that a little bit? Got about a minute.
I think that I take Dave's point, and I agree. It is a sop to convenience, and it's a reckoning between the military, the SCIF, the security of the SCIF is not new, and it is the gold standard. And then it's like we have all these other things where in our daily life, where every communication avenue is increasing in reach and frequency, and there hasn't been the analog for military communication. So maybe the answer is to invest in something that really is secure for devices, so that our people can work in the way we kind of in the new work world. But yeah, you're right. The awareness, and I appreciate your analysis very much regarding the classifications, and that's one of the values that you really you bring to Liberty Nation, Dave. So thank you so much for that, laying it out for us.
Elon Musk can make it. He can develop it probably in a couple of weeks. No CIA.
If he can make it, someone can hack it. I'm just going to say that. But all right, guys.
Same with the SCIF.
Well, maybe Donald Trump learned a very important lesson. Use the SCIF already. I mean, that's what it's for. That's why they were built. Anyway, thanks, panel, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. The Democratic Party is in the ditch when even the New York Times can't find a word of encouragement. From columnist Maureen Dowd, who says the organization is in a coma, to the editorial board upping that diagnosis as a bad case of in denial. Throw the playbook out. 2024 was a disaster for the party. You'd think they'd at least check the map for road closures. John Clark is a former member of the Democratic Party. Were you as stubborn as they are to admitting fault? You can atone now.
Thanks a lot for outing me, though I've confessed it previously here on C5. Obviously, I'm not that stubborn because I left them about a decade ago. And I see more people leaving the party. I think Robert Kennedy said that he didn't leave the party left him, and it seems to still be heading out into space, further and further away from planetary orbit. We see Tim Walz acting like a fool and doubling down on the exact policies, only about 10% or so of American support. And so I don't think it's over. That I've also often cited Thomas Frank's book, Listen Liberals, in which he claims that you cannot make a party over the long term about just hating Donald Trump. You need actual policies. And this party doesn't seem to have gotten that message yet, nor does it have any viable policies. Its entire platform seems to be to hate whatever is red. And they see red whenever they see a MAGA hat or anything else. And then the whole Tesla thing, it's all part of an implosion. So I'm not sure if the quotes you gave aren't actually understatements. A segment of the party is very stubborn, but I think Democrats who are having their cars keyed and defecated upon and other craziness, because it's just insane, are going to continue to not be so stubborn and probably start finding out that, like you guys here, that you're really nice to us former Democrats and you're welcoming and you're affirming. Thank you.
We like to affirm. That's what we do. We affirm. What do the Republicans, Scott, do the Republicans, or rather MAGA, need to worry about from the most from the progressives? I mean, what are they wielding?
Well, to the extent that they want to win against their challengers, my whole political life, I've heard stories of every few years, it seems like so-and-so can't lose. The winds are behind them. Look at this. Whether it's George Bush's approval rating with the Iraq War, or I could give you another half dozen examples. And then 6 months, 10 months, 14 months later, it's like, oh, they flushed that whole thing down the toilet. So I don't know how they're going to flush it down the toilet, but I'm confident that politicians can figure out a way to cut themselves off at the knees. And it might be things like sending immigrants from country A to prisons in country C without so much as an administrative hearing before doing so, for instance, that might have some impact negatively.
Well, that's a good point. So, Dave, since Scott just mentioned, who's going to come in, swoop in, and save, is that going to be Tim Walz, our governor friend who is walking around and touting his manliness?
Well, his masculinity is...
let's couldn't say that.
Yeah, his superior only in his own mind. He clearly added no significant advantage to the Harris-Walz ticket. And, I use the word significant in its loosest sense. Walz is kind of a caricature of a politician. It's like the cartoon character Mr. Magoo with better eyesight. When he debated J.D. Vance, it seemed as though he were truly perplexed as to why he was on the stage. He projects a Biden light image, and that's when Biden was awake. If any Democrat is going to emerge from the pack, that person is going to have a compelling message that resonates with people. The Dems lost the last election because they lost the people who normally would kind of rally to their cause, except they didn't have a cause. They have nothing. They aren't the party of the people. They demonstrated that. They're the party of the privileged elite, progressive, but more to the point, hypocritical left. They rail against oligarchs while depending on the support from oligarchs. They rail against real initiatives to bring law and order and expect their constituents to thank them for having lawlessness and crime-ridden streets. Their president
Democrats, the Democratic oligarch is better than the Republican oligarch. Is that?
Yeah, well, the Democrats don't even admit that they do take money from oligarchs. Their message is just singularly ridiculous. They embrace the 20% of American people and totally disrespect the remaining 80% who find what the Dems are pushing as silly madness.
I saw a thing in Texas, a story, I couldn't believe it, that he was appearing with Beto O'Rourke. They're still trying to fly that guy. It's like, when do you get the first flight?
They can fly because he's like one of those car dealership balloons.
Well, Beto was in one of his town halls, sitting in the front row.
Okay, so the party's ineffective. I think we can all agree on that. Currently, the Democratic Party is ineffective, and midterms are on their horizon. Is there a way to come back from the ledge, Graham?
Well, politically, there may be, because with the midterms, as you say, kind of on the horizon, there's always the chance, that they actually manage to somehow win enough seats to either, kind of crush the Republican majority in the House down to like one seat or something, which of course benefits them politically, or they even manage to somehow grab a couple of seat majority. I'm not sure I see that happening, but of course, just from from the politics angle, that's how they come back from the ledge. From an ideological standpoint, I don't believe there's any coming back. I think they have just, I think the Democratic Party is toast ideologically, because they have managed to so enthusiastically and zealously embrace things like transgenderism that, the only way they come back from their extremist positions now is to literally abandon those very things that they championed. And how are they going to look amongst on the progressive left, which is basically the only base they've got now left, is that 15, maybe at the most 20% of Americans who consider themselves kind of hardcore progressives. That's their base now. They are going to lose those people if they suddenly walk away from the whole transgender rights and the whole DEI thing, if they abandon all those policies that got them into this hole, then they are disaffecting the very core of their voter base. So I don't see how they come back. I will hit you with one quick poll, though. And I think this came out either yesterday or today. The latest CNN poll. Democrats' approval is at 21% approval, 68% disapproval. That's among all voters. Among voters who describe themselves just as Democrats, 40% approve, 49% disapprove. So they have 9 points underwater with their own voters. Their only hope going forward is that Trump and the Republicans in Congress make such an unholy mess of everything honestly, I can't really see that happening. But that's the only way that the Democrats come back.
They're going to try to spin that it's happening, though.
Don't bet against it.
Do what?
Don't bet against it, meaning them screwing, things up so bad. That's all I'm saying.
Well, when it comes to congressional Republicans, no, I would never bet against that. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, and notice the Florida special elections.
Yeah.
They are also an indication that even without Trump, and those are red districts, but speaking to Graham's suggestion, the next election will be an off presidential year, and sometimes conservatives don't show up with as much alacrity. But Democrats, they're still shrinking. So I think Graham's right.
Well, as long as there's still people throwing, firecrackers at the Republicans and defecating on Teslas, conservatives are probably going to fight back on that, and that they are probably more aware since the riots of 2020 than anything with this George Floyd nonsense, and it's brought people to the table to really think about politics, I think. And I think that's where we're getting these big turnouts on elections.
I just think it's so delicious. If you think about the movement progressive left and the top portion of those folks socioeconomically, what are the odds that they own a Tesla previous to the Trump administration? It's pretty high,
Yeah.
So I just love the problem.
I'm not driving one.
Themselves,
Well, I doubt anyone thought the Democrats would be in a coma after 2024, but here we are. I do have a sneaking suspicion that the party will rally when it is battle time. Thanks, panel. Well, those coexist bumper sticker people are sadistically branding and burning private property again. Peaceful protesting appears to be a quaint memory. Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King certainly would not resort to running over a Tesla counter-protester with their car. Good thing those Teslas have cameras. Violence is escalating. The Albuquerque Republican State Party headquarters was firebombed. How long will this lawlessness remain unchecked? Graham, I've asked you this before. What is wrong with these protesters, and why do they go to such extremes?
Well, I think the reason why they go to such extremes is, there's two sides to look at this. There's the organizers behind it, and there's the people who are actually out on the streets committing the violence. Now, those people who are committing the violence, they're doing it for a simple reason, and that is because, and this is by no means the first time in history this has happened, but when one group of people, whether it's an ethnic group, a religious sect, or just a kind of a political, group of people who share the same politics, you demonize them long enough. You convince enough people that this one group is virtually subhuman, that they are irredeemable, that they are the worst human beings who ever lived. They're fascists, they're deplorables, they're Nazis, they're homophobes, they're racists. These are the worst people who were ever born. Well, of course, violence against such people, a lot of people might say, is justified. If they're that bad, then, any action you take against them is justified. So that's why the people out on the streets are doing this. Now, the people who are organizing it, and I'm going to say this, that the Democrats are condoning this violence. And the way they are doing it is by not condemning it. I mean, their silence in this case really is complicit. And of course, the media as well, And when the media talks about this violence, they're also kind of in a backdoor way condoning it, because their take on it is, it's terrible. Yes, the violence is terrible, and it's just terrible that these people have been driven to this level of violence because Donald Trump and his supporters are just so awful. So that is a way, really, of also condoning the violence.
Well, if I
and of
see
course-
one, I'm not going to run him over in the street.
and it's the hype of it. You see, it's if there's general violence against a group of people, then it's easy for the people who are orchestrating the violence to say, well, look what's going on. This is how terrible our opponents are. The ordinary Americans are going around and, burning their cars and attacking them in the street. This is how bad they are. So it's a kind of, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We'll be violent against these people, and then we'll say, look at the violence against them. They must be terrible people.
John, who's financing? Who's bailing these people out? I mean, Graham already covered who's fueling the people. And, just by, omission, they've been protected. So, but somebody's got to be financing these people.
Well, as you may have heard, Elon Musk is pointing fingers, I believe, at George Soros in particular. And I think that part of what Graham's talking about, what's interesting is there's Trump derangement syndrome, and now there's Musk derangement syndrome. And now there's not just orange hair man, but anybody with a red hat on. They're like bulbs that see things to charge. And by the way, if you look at Twitter, it's now all white men are bad. Even if they're Democrats, they're bad. I mean, it really has become unhinged, and they justify it in the name of justice. But in answer to your question, I think George Soros has been behind this. And now it's interesting because I think if Elon Musk had the evidence, he would prove it. But Soros is a little clever, and what he does is he uses the NGO structures, and he particularly backs organizations that might, for instance, support the violent people without supporting them directly, which I think is interestingly, as I put out, I have a piece coming out, I believe, about Greenpeace, just lost a $660-some million judgment. And they said, well, we didn't condone the behaviors of people at the pipeline. No, they were violent. We just sent them money and sandwiches. Soros kind of does that. He backs the National Lawyers Guild. The National Lawyers Guild, which I'll confess I was a part of when it was about black lawyers, 40 years ago, has turned into the Antifa legal front. He supports, in fact, through Axe Blue, he just gave $7.6 million to groups with the following names: Troublemakers, Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, the Indivisible Project, and the Democratic Socialists of America. He is also suspected of being involved with some of the Palestinian protests. And he's behind legalizing drugs and backing prosecutors to decriminalize and let criminals back on the street. Elon Musk and others I've seen in some videos, they say, look, at noon, all the protesters leave. It's like the clock went off and it's Fred Flintstone and they're sliding off the back of the dinosaur. So I think there's evidence out there that they've been paid. You see the mainstream media and Politico saying, oh, no, Pasha, that's not true. And you have crowds coming out to see Bernie Sanders, the ultimate decrepit old white man. I mean, I think there's money behind it. There was money behind BLM, and there's a cover-up about it. So I can't really prove it, but it sure looks like that some people are being paid to be agitators and even be violent, perhaps.
I had a friend just this week asked me if this wasn't, we were talking about the Teslas and the violence at the dealerships and just the random stuff. And he asked me, he goes, well, isn't this the same thing, as when the colonists protested King George III? And, well, I wasn't there, even though I am a history buff, but, and Scott wasn't there either. So I'm not trying to insult you, Scott, but I know you know more than I do. So what do you think?
Well, I just have to take one issue with Mr. Clark's characterization early on that Soros is pretty good at what he does. He is a master. This man may be the best that has ever been in the combination of using his riches to fulfill his own desires for the public policy of this nation. And what he did with the return on investment with the prosecutor's office has probably never been a better ROI for money sent versus changes made. And I think it's right to look at him and what he's doing. Now, I will say, though, that when you mentioned he was for legalization of drugs, I thought, gee, let me get my pen out to write the Open Society Institute a check, because that is not anti-American. That's the most pro-American thing we could ever do. So I just wanted to make sure that I was on record saying it.
What are you, a libertarian?
I'm right.
I actually agree the drug war failed, but back to the Tea Party issue.
Yeah.
One of the things
he wanted to know if there was what was the difference? Or are we just acting like we've always acted?
It's pretty much like we've always acted, I think. Not to necessarily reference other segments, but we have talked about how one side seems to be more supported by acts of violence or pretending that they're not. And so that may be, additional impetus to kind of look harder at one when we're talking about the violence. I recall that pipeline protest, and it was violent. Extremely so against the workers and the property owners. And I don't see how it's okay. And I think we all know that if a different person was president, there would have been a much different outcome in that area.
Might I interject that the Open Society Foundation has said it doesn't support violence and, quote, that our grantees operate independently.
Yeah,
that's a direct parallel.
This is not CNN, John Clark, and you cannot be fact-checking everything while we're doing this program.
No, I'm agreeing with Scott. In the pipeline case, Greenpeace similarly tried to say it's sort of contracted out. Here, you do what you want. We're not responsible for what we do, and we don't condone violence.
One day we'll get a lawsuit, and there will be a discovery process, and text messages and emails will be revealed. I think that likely maybe challenge the notion that there's no coordination there or a higher level.
But I still want to revisit this question, so I'm going to go to Dave. Dave, weigh in on this. I mean, is this level of violence new or not new?
It's not new. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the left has been champions of violence and, emblematic of how they go.
Is it always the left?
As a matter of fact, seldom do you have organized, violent extremists on the right tearing down store owners' property, destroying the livelihoods of the people you're trying to convince to be on your side. No, it's been the left, and 1968 is emblematic. You have the left trying to destroy the Democratic Convention. Did they peacefully march? No, they destroyed property, as they did in the 2020 George Floyd experience in that summer, the summer of love, as one of them put it. No, the fact is that what needs to happen here is these folks need to be Antifa. Why have we not labeled Antifa domestic terrorists and gone after them as domestic terrorists? I have no explanation for that, because they are, in fact, domestic terrorists. And so we need to go.
I thought parents of school-age children were in Virginia. Isn't that what was going on there?
No, right.
They've got 1,000 guys trying to find a urine-soaked mattress in Moscow. They don't have time for this Antifa investigation you suggest.
Right, exactly. Well, that's you probably have a point there, Scott. But I mean, think of the money that was spent under the Biden administration in the Department of Defense to find these terrible right-wing white extremists, and they couldn't find less than 100. Of course, that was what they said, but less than 100. That could have been one, which I would argue mathematically is less than 100. This is ridiculous, and to suggest in any way that the right or the conservative, politically leaning people have ever done this is absurd. They have not.
Okay. Anybody want to rebut that? And Scott, your description was perfect, but I think everybody knew what you were talking about. Look, if one is a critical thinker, it might cross your mind that the progressive left seems to need a mental health day, or perhaps a year. We'll keep you posted on how all this unravels, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your insight, panel. We are back to have a little fun with our panel of overly excitable people. Except Dave. And since Mr. Patterson wins every week, and we are not sure why, he's going to host today's show. Things may get weird. Take it, Dave.
Thank you, Sarah. This is an opportunity for our cast of experts to demonstrate their, expertise. Please, everyone, remember that this is just for fun. So consider your answers as if your lives depended upon getting the answer right. Well, for our first question, there's been a lot of flap among legacy media about White House using Signal encrypted group chat and allowing an unauthorized invitee. That interloper was the editor-in-chief of a well-known left-leaning magazine. Was it A, Vogue, B, The Atlantic, C, Ladies' Home Journal, D, The Pacific, or E, Field and Stream?
B.
All the above. Still B.
It was the Gulf of America.
I think
The
Jeffrey
Atlantic.
Goldberg has actually written for all of those publications.
John got the answer. Good work, John. Now, number 2. Remember, when you give your answer, give the alphabet letter and then the answer. Okay. Senator Bernie.
Strict.
This is a tight ship, Sarah, a tight ship.
I'm going to start recording my answers now so I don't screw up.
Senator Bernie Sanders, whom we'll all know is an independent from Vermont, and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York, have been touring the country to hold rallies under the guise of what message? A, George Soros is a better billionaire than Elon Musk. B, rallying followers to buy Hyundai electric vehicles. C, fighting oligarchy. Or D, fighting for democratic socialism.
D.
C, fighting oligarchy.
Oligarchy.
Sarah, you got it. Because John kind of stuttered and
I did.
I didn't hear very well.
I can see.
So, okay.
I'm from Vermont anyway. So
Indeed, you are. Number 3, name the committee that has identified 26 House Democrats it considers vulnerable in the upcoming 2026 midterm elections. Is it the Committee on Competitive House Seats, the Committee on Good Government, the National Republican Congressional Committee, or the Federal Election Board?
C.
Was that Scott that I heard?
I
Yes.
think so.
So Scott has 1 on the board. Pretty awesome, Scott. Okay, moving right along. Number 4. Name the Venezuelan gang that is apparently using Colorado as a command and control center. Is it A, Friends of Carlotta, B, Tren de Aragua, C, MS, Mi Casa is Su Casa, or D, the Venezuelan Automobile Club, or E, Medellin Cartel?
B.
B.
Trente de Agua.
Sarah gets 1 there.
Oh, I forgot.
Sarah is
Thought it was
got a
Antifa.
commanding lead of 2. Pretty good, Sarah. Number 5.
Okay. I can roll my R's.
What would parents in Illinois have to file with the state if the proposed Homeschool Act passes? Will it be a list of their children's preferred pronouns? B, a letter authorizing tofu in the homemade school lunch? C, an educational portfolio? D, an explanation why their child should actually be educated? Or E, children's vaccine status?
C.
C.
Educational portfolio.
Sarah, you came through like a champ.
What scares me is I didn't know if it was C or E, the vaccine thing, even though they're in their own homes. That's what terrifies me.
The
about this
vaccine
country.
thing is required, though. Once you file C,
I
you
was
actually,
thinking it might be all of those things.
you have
Okay,
to-
we're moving
Sorry,
right
go ahead.
along to number 6, everyone's favorite. Name the plane that President Donald Trump recently announced would be a winner in the next generation air dominance 6th generation jet fighter competition. Was it the Grumman F4F Hellcat, the Northrop Grumman B-21 Radar, the C Lockheed Martin's F-22 Raptor, D, the Boeing F-47, or E, Fairchild A-10 Warthog?
D, the F-47.
Yes, Graham, you are on the board. How exciting for you and your family. Okay, moving right along. Number 7. What is the term some circles have adopted to describe a firearm without a serial number? A, firearms without serial numbers. B, concealed gun. C, spirit weapon. D, ghost gun. Or E, my gun.
D, ghost gun.
John Clark, you slipped in.
No, that was Scott. That was not John Clark.
Scott.
Was
No,
that Scott?
Scott beat me by like a
Okay,
point,
Scott.
point.
That was the
Okay.
ghost answer, but I did know that one. And
Okay.
I prefer
Sounds cool.
Patriots. I prefer Patriots pistol for the. By the way, next time.
Yes, we will definitely include that
Thank
next
you.
time, Scott. And since you sound a whole lot like John, I would take care of that. It sounds like a medical problem. Okay. Moving right along, number 8. The Associated Press recently retracted an inaccurate article claiming Tulsi Gabbard had said which 2 world leaders were good friends. A, Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. B, Putin and Trump. C, Macron and Kenny Loggins. D, Thatcher and Merkel. Or E, Obama and Mandela.
B.
B.
John, you got it. You slipped in. You.
I
Okay.
forgot what letter it was by the time I got done laughing at you earlier.
Yeah, I know you
Yes,
just. That's always a problem.
I gotta just
not-
tune you out.
number
when the right
9.
answer comes out.
Number 9. What group was Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota referring to when he essentially said he could beat them up? A, the Association of Minnesota Walleye Fishermen. B, Girls in Boys Bathrooms. C, MAGA supporters. D, 2 Girl Scouts if they were shorter than him. Or E, 3 Boy Scouts any size.
C.
C,
All of the
MAGA
above.
supporters.
Was that John who said C, all of the above? You would be wrong.
That was me.
No, I
Okay.
said C, but not all of the above.
Okay.
MAGA supporters.
Okay, let's fess up. I think it was Scott who said C, MAGA supporters.
I also did.
Yeah, but you were late. That's the-
Actually, this is another you confusing John Clark's voice and mine. I am the one who said all of the above, and John Clark is the one who said C.
Okay, so the next time we are going to be on television so people can see their mouths moving. Okay, I'm going to give it to Sarah because I can.
I got 4.
You got 4.
It's the only thing I
Okay,
can win. Let me have it.
last and most important. Number 10. President Trump wants Congress to pass legislation allowing borrowers who buy an American-made automobile to A, deduct their first monthly payment from that year's income tax. B, to receive free tires for the first 5 years they own the automobile. C, if the auto is an EV, will receive a 3x5 card listing all the charging stations in the US. And D, will be able to deduct the interest payments on their loan. Or E, will receive the autographed 2-volume set of Why Tariffs Are Good.
D.
E.
John got it as D. Okay, there we are. All right, Don Pardo, tell me who was the winner. I was kidding about Don Pardo. He's not here. I think he passed away several years
I think
ago.
finally he did go. He held on for quite a while.
He did
took
indeed,
For a
but-
long time.
Let me count up and do my ciphering, as they say in
I
Missouri.
have 4.
I had no idea about that deduction thing. Oh my god.
So
I didn't either.
let's see. John with 3 comes in second, and Sarah is the big winner. And
I'm number one.
Congratulations, Sarah. Your personal autographed coffee cup will be coming in the mail shortly.
Can I get a participation trophy?
Yeah,
No.
you'll get one in October.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, hasn't this been fun? Because it was just for fun.
Yeah, well, folks, thanks for playing along. Hope we left you with smiles and pub chatter for your next gathering. We're out of here. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.